Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Legitimate Matters. We've got another great show for you today. I've got two great guests. One of my guests is Tim Worsma, CEO at Revenue Generation LLC. And Tim is a leader in revenue management, specializing in property and portfolio revenue management, sales, marketing, distressed asset turnaround, and asset assessment. And my other guest is Dan Skodal, Vice President of Data Science and Analytics at Cindyne. Dan has over 10 years of revenue management experience in gaming, hotels, multifamily real estate, and airlines. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, William.
How are you? How are you doing today, guys?
Doing well, thank you.
Doing well, thank you for inviting me back again, William.
Oh, listen, it's great to see you. Before we went live, we were just talking about how fast time was moving since we were under the stay-at-home orders. Dan, when you were on your stay-at-home order, did you do anything special? Did anything, something that you would not normally have done if you were not on a stay-at-home order?
So yeah, I have a 5-year-old son, and certainly he's been spending a lot of time at home as well, as have I. He is a big fan of Lego. We discovered actually when he was probably still 3, and so we essentially converted our dining room into a full-time Lego workshop and spent an awful lot of time and thousands upon thousands of Lego pieces putting some models together. So that was fun and nice time spent with him.
So does that mean at some particular point you guys are going to take a trip to Legoland?
When it's open, yes.
When it's open?
We had our site. We do a summer trip to upstate New York every summer, and the new Legoland in upstate was supposed to open this summer, and they moved it back to next summer because of the crisis.
Okay.
And so likely we'll be planning a trip for next summer.
What about you, Tim? Anything different that you did during the stay-at-home order?
Well, one of my passions is flying, and when COVID happened, I didn't get as much opportunity to fly due to restrictions at the club that I'm at right now, but my wife was kind enough to buy me a drone, and I just want to show it off here real quick here. It's quite an impressive little machine, which has been a little passion that I've had in the last little while. I've taken lots of pictures of my house, local parks and so on. It's been kind of fun to play around with.
How long did it take you to learn how to navigate a drone?
Probably about an hour to kind of
probably about an hour. Okay, very good.
There's
all right, so
neat features on it to make it easy for me.
Okay. Well, guys, we've been talking about all things hospitality, revenue management, and I believe that some of the strategies that's used in sales and marketing and revenue optimization are really strategies that can be used across the board for other types of companies. How do you actually evaluate a hotel's performance in a COVID world, in a COVID-19 world?
So some of the considerations right now, it's different because who we used to compete with before, some of that inventory actually may be offline right now. And there's so many different dynamics happening in the market that you really need to take a look at some of the broader statistics in the market. Not only what's happening from an occupancy perspective, but what's happening at the local airport, where are flights coming in from, which ones have been canceled. And then you're also taking a look at what's coming into your hotel. Is it business from drive market? Most likely it is. Are there projects happening now that you could take advantage of? So the way hotels have started to look at it is different, and they're adding new competitors to their sets just because they need a broader view on what's happening in the market there. From a profitability standpoint, they really have to take a look at their overhead and kind of the break-even point. Um, some hotels, some luxury hotels or upper upscale hotels, are not profitable at 30-40%. And in some instances, the owners have just said, let's just keep the doors closed until we get enough demand in market that we can become profitable. It's more profitable to you lose less money by staying closed than running a 40% occupancy.
And some of the hotels that you're referring to, I understand, might not open until 2021.
That is very true.
In a previous show, Tim, that you and I did, Bob Gilbert, president and CEO of HSMAI, mentioned that 70% of hotel workers have been either laid off or furloughed. But for those that are still employed, and now that most cities or even New York is open, how normally we would do a SMART plan. As a director of sales and marketing myself, that's one of our activities. You put together your market segmentations and you put together a game plan. But what does a SMART plan look like in COVID world? Where do you even begin with something like that?
As hotels reopen, I think, as you just alluded to, very important to think along the lines of your segmentation and your business mix, and really break things down into small chunks, as small and as granular as possible. Understanding that as things start to as business starts to come back, they'll likely do so in phases. Broad strokes. It seems that the data shows that there's already, some pent-up demand among leisure travelers, and among those, and I think Tim mentioned, more happening in sort of the drive-to markets, very localized markets. There's still a bit of uncertainty around corporate, around business travel, and then groups, certainly further out. But taking those and breaking them down into even smaller chunks and understanding, lifestyle demographics, psychographics, the desire to travel among each group, and then connecting the right targeted messaging towards each of those groups, understanding what's going to resonate. Everyone's priorities now seem to center around health, safety, financial concerns, and talking to each customer at as micro a level as possible, that helps to reassure and reinstill confidence in travel. I think that's where that SMART strategy begins, at least, and then sort of benchmarking to that plan as you go.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's as you're addressing your SMART plan, you really need to ask yourself, what can we deliver well at this point in time, and what can we not, and focus on what you can deliver, and those guarantees to customers, especially from a safety standpoint, are so important this time. It's more important than just price at this point.
It's certainly in the hospitality industry, it's a very strong relationship-oriented industry. Sales directors and sales managers, catering managers are very intentional about establishing strong personal relationships with a lot of the clients that are decision makers that drive the business. Under these circumstances, when that type of connection is not available, how relevant is digital marketing? Is it pretty much the same, or is it more important now today than it might have been perhaps just even a year ago?
Yeah, and digital marketing is very important, especially in this point in the cycle that we're in. Um, I can just speak from my own personal experience. My wife and I are going away to Asheville, North Carolina, the fourth weekend, and safety was number one. And we wanted to be assured, so we wanted to make sure the messaging was appropriate, and the right protocols were in place. We were assured through several different marketing digital messages from the hotel that we're staying at, um, and that's really important. But the other component to that is um, encouraging customers to get back to, and this relates to more of the frequent guests. Um, Finding ways to get them comfortable with the idea of getting back to their normal routine again. That's a joint effort, with brands, with CVBs. That's a joint effort with markets. But that's an important message, along with the safety message out there right now.
Yeah, I'll add, you hear a lot about the concept of contactless interaction, especially as it relates to hotels, but all kinds of experiences in this sort of post-COVID world. And I think that perhaps we've long taken for granted that CRM and digital marketing is, in a way, that contactless interaction, and something we need to rely on now more than ever. Tim's speaking about his upcoming trip as a good example. Perhaps that hotel already understands Tim's preferences and can cater his experience to his needs, with, and at the same time minimizing the face-to-face interaction. And this can happen both pre-stay, during stay, post-stay, at many different touch points, including social, including email, including on-site, electronic messaging of various kinds. And I think any hotel that has already equipped itself to, for success in that vein, will certainly have a good chance of success.
I think it's necessary now to really rethink who your target customer is and to find out how they like to communicate. What are they thinking? What are their sensitive spots or their thoughts? And to really understand how to, through digital marketing, send a type of message that reaches them emotionally. And you're talking about it, Dan, you're talking about safety. As an example, I was doing some research for different types of resorts recently. And on the webpage of this one particular property, they had a whole page that was dedicated to all of these safety measures that they have put in place to protect their employees as well as the guest. But then they took it a step further and they talked about what services are available. So if you arrive at the property, they are managing your expectations before you even get there. So now for myself, who's looking at a possible, I need to get away, I need a break, and I want to go someplace where I can relax, and I'm looking at wellness options. Well, this particular property is really high on my radar because I felt that they were making that effort to make me feel comfortable.
Agreed. But as I mentioned earlier, I think that targeted communication is important, that understanding that people's motivations, people's intentions are going to be different. Honestly, I think going to a hotel website and seeing a page about all the safety guidelines and restrictions, et cetera, certainly reassuring to a lot of people that want to travel or need to travel and want to visit, and perhaps puts their mind at ease. But also understanding that that could potentially have an unintended effect on other segments of travelers, and might make them maybe give pause and say, there's all this going on. Maybe I'm not quite ready yet, or they're taking everyone's temperature on the way into the lobby. Should that continue to be an issue? Should that be an issue at all before I'm ready to travel? So perhaps the messaging, while the goal obviously is to get all guests to want to come back and make that trip, the means to that goal might need to be different for different kinds of people.
Wow, that's a very interesting spin. I hadn't really looked at it like that. That the messaging might be too strong and have a reverse effect.
And that's just a hypothetical, but that just lends credence to the idea that everyone's psychology is different, everyone's motivation is different, and you may have to talk differently to someone who can get in their car and drive versus someone who would need to get on a plane to get to your property. That might be a set of decisions based on a completely different set of criteria, and you just have to craft that messaging separately.
Well, on the revenue strategy side, sometimes hotels in this particular environment might decide or choose to drop their rates because they feel that might drive more demand. We know that it doesn't, but could we be looking at a price war in the hotel industry?
I'll start on that one. It's worth noting that all the data that is out there, not at my fingertips, of course, for this call, but everything that we've seen from past crises and downturns would seem to indicate that hotels that do race to the bottom, so to speak, with rate can often be the ones that are slowest to recover from a RevPAR perspective. Changing that perception among guests, once you've started heavily discounting and trying to get back to that place of price and rate integrity is a long road potentially. But you said it. I mean, especially right now, demand is not a function of price. So if someone wants to travel, they want to travel. If someone just doesn't want to travel, they're likely staying home and likely not enticed by deep discounting. And again, it's tough with the competitive landscape to resist the urge to follow the rest of your competitors, down on price. But there's other ways to compete, and I think a better approach is to try to compete from a value standpoint, compete on value proposition. Maybe you're still heavily engaged in promotional activities, but those promotional activities could be centered around value adds, bundling, things that don't involve straight discounting, that help you preserve that rate integrity in the longer run.
So for sales and revenue directors that are either watching or at home hoping that they're going to go back to work soon, what can they do in the meantime to educate themselves and to prepare for going back into the workforce? How can a hotel person be prepared for this new world that we live in?
There's some really great resources out there right now. I can point to hsmai.org, and I personally am training a revenue management course in the fall, starting in September. And if you meet all the requirements, you can actually become certified in revenue management if that is your desire. But there's also a digital marketing course, there's a sales course going on, you can become certified in that. And then there's also a data course being offered. So there's a lot of different opportunities to not only enhance your own discipline, but also understand cross disciplines in there as well. I think it'll really help your career if you can become certified in different areas there.
I would agree. And the good news, and there's good news in that, Tim, and that is that there's actually a lot of courses. There's free courses, there's more formal courses, but there's so many things that you can do to educate yourself in all of these areas. So just not sitting home and just watching the news or Netflix, but really taking courses that will make you a lot more competitive in this particular environment that we're living in.
Exactly.
So on the, I have to throw in a current event right now. The news is reporting the spiking that's going on across the country. And here we are, and we were hoping that the numbers were going down. Certainly things are a lot better in New York, and now other states are going in the opposite direction. What are your feelings about that?
So I'm in North Carolina, and so William, unfortunately, I just heard today that I'd have to quarantine myself for 14 days before I can visit you in New York, because we're one state that's spiking. And yesterday, several European companies announced that they're not going to allow U.S. travelers in at this point in time. So it's an interesting time for us in our country. We clearly do not have the coronavirus under control at this point in time. We're learning as we go. We're in the first phase. The second phase, could come in the fall and could be even worse. So we have to learn from what is working and what's not working, and collectively as a country, we really need to kind of get our act together and figure it out, hopefully sooner than later.
I would absolutely agree. And I'm sorry, Dan, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to throw in a fun anecdote based on what Tim mentioned about European countries not allowing U.S. travelers. And speaking of our earlier discussion around crafting the right marketing message, obviously this news was, I think I saw something in the news just yesterday about the fact that European countries would shut down to U.S. travelers. On the very same day yesterday, got an email from a cruise line whose name shall remain, or a cruise line who shall remain nameless. But they were advertising a promotion for free or reduced airfare for cruises leaving from Europe. And the very same day that we might actually be not able to gain entry into Europe. So I thought that was an example of perhaps what not to do from a messaging standpoint. But to their credit, maybe they did not know at the time that they put that promotion together. But some irony to it, indeed.
So, as before the show ends, I want to ask another question, guys, and either one of you can take this. Someone walks in, someone comes to you and says, "Oh, we don't know what we're going to do. We're at a complete loss. We decided that we want to open the hotel in a month. What should we do?" What do you think right out of the gate would be like the first 2 or 3 things that person, even if you're opening a different type of business, but you need to prepare yourself for a sales and revenue strategy? What comes first?
I mean, I would start by saying, have contingency plans in place, plan for at least a few different scenarios, and plan for the good case, the plan for best case scenario, plan for worst case scenario, and perhaps some in between, because there still seems to be so much uncertainty, and all the conversations I've had, all the webinars, all the calls, that uncertainty has just been a common thread and common theme throughout. So, I would say, in general, that's an important thing to do.
Tim, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, both Dan and I are data people, so gleaning any information you can get from the market, customer behaviors, really understand their behaviors and what's going to make them comfortable, will be important prior to, and then just be creative, think out of the box. There's a lot of really unique creative things going on right now because of what has happened. People were forced to really think differently about how they run their business, and that's important in times like this.
And one other thing that you said in this conversation was looking at your comp set and maybe having more than one comp set.
Absolutely.
Yeah, competitors that you may not have considered yesterday are could possibly be your competitors today.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a hotel and you historically have depended on business travel or group business, and that's just not happening right now, you need to be looking to leisure type hotels in your market and see how they're pricing, how they're acquiring customers, and see if you can replicate that.
I heard someone say this morning, plan as though you're opening your hotel for the very first time. Plan as if it were a true pre-opening strategy you need to put in place. Understanding that for some time we're not going to measure up to to past benchmarks, and it will be gradual. It will require a phased strategy and a ramp-up strategy. So I thought that was an interesting way to think about it.
Well, I think that in conclusion, and as we wrap up the show, I think the reality is that there's no one answer. It's a matter of just taking all that you've said in the past 30 minutes and having different types of strategies, having plan A, plan B, different comp sets, and experimenting to see what's going to work and what's not going to work. Would you agree, guys?
Absolutely.
And if you guys want to give me a 30-second, last thoughts each, that would be great.
Sure, I can start. This is for anyone out there that was either furloughed or laid off. This is a time for you to kind of rethink and re-energize yourself. So do take that time to learn something new. Read some books. There's a great book that I just read recently by Angela Duckworth, Grit. It talks all about the power and passion of and being persevering in times like this, and very encouraging. It's not always just your talent that's going to get you there, but also your perseverance. So that's very important.
Yeah, I'd echo Tim's sentiment and add that I think we all have to keep in mind that there's a light at the end of this tunnel. We will come out on the other side. We've proven resilience as an industry. We've proven resilience, as a country, as an economy. And while it might take some time, there will be a point in the future where we can say things that are truly back to normal, and perhaps the phrase "new normal," which I personally am not a big fan of, perhaps that phrase goes away.
Well, I agree with that. But guys, I want to thank you both for being on the show. There are so many people that are still scratching their head trying to figure this thing out. And I don't think that we can really talk about it enough because there's always a different idea, a different approach. And I appreciate having two experts on the show that certainly have such a wealth of experience to share. So thank you so much, Tim and Dan, for being on the show. And I also want to thank my viewers for watching Legitimate Matters. Remember to follow us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have questions, you can certainly email legitimatematters@gmail.com. Dan, Tim, you guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us, William.